Paris was drowning in silver rain when Camille stepped out of the taxi, clutching her coat around her trembling body. The world around her smelled of wet stone and blooming lilacs. She had always loved the rain, but tonight, it carried something different, a strange weight, a whisper of something she could not name. Inside the cafe across the street, warm light spilled through foggy windows. She could already see him, Andre, sitting alone, his hands folded around a steaming cup of espresso. He looked up, and even through the glass, she felt the familiar pull in her chest. His eyes, deep and uncertain, were a storm she once thought she could calm. Camille took a deep breath and entered. The bell above the door rang softly, like a memory coming back to life. Andre stood up immediately, his expression torn between joy and regret. "Camille," he breathed, as if saying her name might fix everything. She smiled weakly. "You look tired," she said, sitting opposite him. For a moment, neither spoke. Only the soft jazz music filled the air. Two people who had once shared everything now struggled to share silence. Finally, he said, "You didn't answer my letters." "I didn't know what to say," she replied. "Sometimes silence is safer than words." Andre's jaw tightened. He wanted to reach across the table, to take her hand like he used to. But the air between them was filled with too many ghosts, memories of a love that burned too bright, too fast, and left scars that still ached. "You left without saying goodbye," he said quietly. "I had to," she whispered. "If I stayed, I would have destroyed both of us." Their eyes met. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the windows like a heartbeat. Camille looked down, twisting her ring, not a wedding ring, but a promise Andre once gave her on a bridge overlooking the Seine. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked. Andre smiled faintly, pain flickering in his eyes. "Every time it rains," he took a deep breath. "Camille, I didn't come here to open old wounds. I came because I can't stop thinking about what we lost, and maybe what we still have." She felt her chest tighten. "Andre, you're married now. You have a life. You can't." "I know," he interrupted, "but knowing doesn't make it easier." Camille's voice trembled. "We were never meant to last." Andre leaned forward, his voice low and desperate. "Then why does it still feel like we never ended?" The cafe felt smaller now, suffocating. The music faded into a dull hum. Camille stood abruptly, unable to meet his eyes. "I shouldn't have come," she said. Andre stood too. "Please don't go like this again." But she was already walking toward the door. The bell chimed again as she stepped into the rain. Andre followed her out, his umbrella forgotten on the table. "Camille," he called, his voice breaking through the downpour. She turned. Raindrops clung to her eyelashes. For a heartbeat, they stood there, two souls trapped in a storm of their own making. "I thought I could forget you," she said softly, "but every time it rains, I remember why I can't." Andre took a step closer, but she backed away. "Don't," she whispered. "If you touch me, I'll never be able to let go again." He froze, torn between reason and desire. "Then don't let go," he said. The silence that followed was unbearable. Camille's lips parted, as if to say something, but no words came. She turned and disappeared into the misty streets, her figure slowly swallowed by the rain. Andre stood there, drenched, his heart beating against the ache of what might have been. He whispered into the empty air, "You never really left, did you?" But only the rain answered, steady, relentless, and unkind. As he walked back toward the cafe, something glimmered on the ground. He bent down and picked it up, a small silver earring. Camille's. He smiled faintly, tucking it into his pocket, as if it were a piece of her heart he could still keep. Inside, the cafe lights flickered. The jazz resumed, and life went on as if nothing had happened. But for Andre, the world had shifted again, just like it did the first time she left. And far away, Camille sat in her car, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her mascara was smudged, her lips trembling. "You did the right thing," she whispered to herself. But deep down, she knew she was lying. 3 days passed since the rain-soaked night, when Camille had walked away from Andre. She told herself it was the end, again. But the heart has its own strange gravity, and every time she tried to move forward, memories pulled her back like an invisible tide. It was Sunday morning. Camille sat by her window, watching sunlight spill across the rooftops of Montmartre. Her apartment was quiet, except for the sound of a kettle hissing and the faint hum of a record she hadn't turned off since last night. On the table beside her lay a small envelope, yellowed and creased. No return address, only her name, written in Andre's unmistakable handwriting. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Camille, there are 1,000 things I want to say, and none I can. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, not after the silence, not after the years. But if I could have one more hour with you, I'd tell you what I should have said long ago. It wasn't just love, Camille. It was everything. Andre. Her breath caught. For a long time, she just stared at the words, as if they might rearrange themselves into something easier to bear. But they didn't. They never did. A knock on her door pulled her back to the present. She quickly folded the letter and hid it beneath a book. When she opened the door, Lucas, her neighbor, and her quiet, kind friend, stood there holding a bouquet of daisies. "Morning," he said with a shy smile. "You missed our walk." Camille forced a smile. "I wasn't feeling well." Lucas studied her face. The way her eyes looked distant, like she was somewhere else entirely. "You've been somewhere else for a long time, Camille," he said softly. She turned away. "Maybe I never came back." They sat together by the window. Lucas talked about his new gallery opening, the sunlight, the music, small things that belonged to people who hadn't been broken. Camille tried to listen, but her mind kept drifting to the letter, to Andre's words echoing like a ghost she couldn't silence. Finally, Lucas stood. "I should go," he said. "But Camille, whoever he was, I hope he's not the reason you stopped painting." Her heart clenched. "Maybe he is," she admitted. When he left, the apartment fell silent again. Camille opened the letter once more. There was something else inside, a folded photograph. It was from years ago, she and Andre on the Pont Neuf, laughing carefree. On the back, he had written only 3 words. "I never healed." That night, Camille couldn't sleep. The city outside was alive. Laughter from distant bars, the low hum of traffic, the murmur of Paris breathing. She lay awake, thinking about all the things they could have been if life had been kinder. Meanwhile, across the city, Andre sat alone in his study, staring at an empty glass. His wife, Elise, was in the next room reading, unaware of the storm inside her husband's heart. Or maybe she wasn't unaware. Maybe she'd simply grown used to the distance between them. When she appeared in the doorway, Andre quickly hid the photo on his desk. "You're quiet tonight," she said gently. "Just tired," he replied, his voice tight. Elise nodded but didn't believe him. She walked closer, her eyes falling on the edge of the envelope he'd tried to hide. "What's that?" she asked. Andre froze. "Nothing important." But Elise wasn't convinced. She picked up the letter, her expression changing as she read the name, Camille. "Andre," she whispered, pain flashing through her voice. "You told me it was over." "It was," he said quickly. "I just needed to say goodbye." "Goodbye." She laughed bitterly. "You think writing her again will make it easier? For whom? Her or you?" Andre stood, frustration cracking through his calm facade. "You wouldn't understand." "Then help me understand," Elise shouted. "Help me see why I'm still here, loving a man whose heart belongs to a ghost." The silence that followed was sharp, cruel. Andre's voice broke when he finally spoke. "Because part of me died with her, Elise. And I don't know how to live with what's left." Tears welled in Elise's eyes. She turned away. "Then go," she whispered. "Find her. But when you do, don't come back." That night, Andre packed a small bag. He didn't know what he was chasing, redemption, closure, or madness, but he knew he couldn't stay. The next morning, Camille was sitting in the same cafe where they last met, lost in thought. When she looked up, she froze. Andre stood there, drenched in sunlight this time, not rain. His eyes found hers, and for a moment, everything else disappeared. I told myself I wouldn't come, he said quietly, but I can't live in the memory of you anymore. I need to know if there's still something real. Camille's lips trembled. And if there isn't, then at least I'll finally stop searching. She looked at him for a long time. The world outside felt distant, muted. Then, softly, she said, "You shouldn't have come, Andre." "Maybe not," he replied, "but I had to." She turned away, tears blurring her vision. "And what about Elise?" He hesitated. "She deserves the truth. So do you." Camille's voice dropped to a whisper. "The truth is, love doesn't always mean forever. Sometimes it just means once." He wanted to argue, to fight, to hold her, but her words cut through the air like a knife. As he reached for her hand, she pulled away. "You can't heal by reopening the wound, Andre." Their eyes met one last time, full of everything they never said. Then Camille stood and walked out, leaving him in the light that suddenly felt too bright. Andre sat there, staring at her empty chair. The city moved on around him, but he couldn't. On the table, her untouched coffee had gone cold, just like all the promises they made under the Paris rain. Paris had moved on. Autumn had arrived quietly, coating the city in shades of amber and regret. The leaves that once danced in spring now fell gently along the Seine, like pages of forgotten love letters. Camille was standing in the center of a small art gallery, her heart racing. The walls were covered in her newest collection, her first exhibit in nearly 3 years. Every painting carried a secret she could not speak, a memory only her brush could confess. And though her name hung proudly on the door, she felt exposed, like every heartbeat, every sorrow, was now on display. The last piece she hung that morning was her most personal. It was called The Rain Before the Storm. A painting of 2 silhouettes standing apart beneath a gray sky, hands reaching but never touching. She didn't have to explain who they were. Anyone who looked closely enough could see the story hidden in the brushstrokes, the ache of love that never found its ending. As guests began to arrive, Camille tried to smile. The gallery filled with quiet chatter, the soft sound of footsteps on marble, and the clinking of champagne glasses. She greeted critics, friends, strangers, all while her mind was somewhere else. Every time the door opened, her eyes flickered toward it, searching for a face she told herself she didn't want to see. And then he was there. Andre. He stood near the entrance, looking older, quieter, but somehow lighter, as if the burden he'd carried had begun to dissolve. He waited until the crowd thinned before walking toward her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then, softly, he said, "You finally painted again." Camille smiled faintly. "It was the only way I could stop dreaming about you." Andre looked around, his eyes resting on the final painting. "That one," he said, nodding toward the rain before the storm. "That's us, isn't it?" Camille didn't answer. She didn't need to. The silence said everything. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I wanted to stay away, but Elise left me. She said she was tired of living with half a man." Camille's eyes softened. "I'm sorry. Don't be," Andre said quietly. "She deserved all of me, but I gave too much to the past. I don't even know who I am without it." Camille looked away. "And what do you want now?" Andre hesitated. "Not forgiveness. Just to see the truth one last time." He took a slow step toward the painting, his hand trembling as he traced the air near it, never touching the canvas, as if afraid to break the spell. "You captured everything," he murmured. "The way we stood in the rain. The distance we never crossed." Camille's throat tightened. Art remembers what people try to forget. He turned to her, his voice rough. "And have you forgotten?" She met his gaze. "No. But I've learned to live with remembering." Andre exhaled, a faint smile flickering through the sadness. "You always were stronger than me." "Not stronger," she said softly. "Just better at pretending." He laughed quietly, a sound both beautiful and broken. "Then pretend one last time," he whispered. "Pretend I never hurt you. Pretend this moment doesn't end here." Camille looked up at him, eyes glistening. "It has to, Andre. That's the only way it will ever mean something." He wanted to argue, but the words died before they reached his lips. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object, a silver earring. Her breath caught. "You kept it." "It fell that night in the rain," he said. "I thought it was all I had left of you. But I was wrong." He placed it in her palm. "Now it belongs where it should." Their fingers brushed, a touch so light it felt like a memory passing between them. For a heartbeat, the world around them faded. No crowd, no noise. Only two souls finally standing in peace beneath the ruins of what once was. "Goodbye, Andre," she said softly. "Goodbye, Camille." He stepped back, his eyes lingering on her one last time before turning away. She watched as he disappeared into the crowd, the sound of his footsteps slowly fading like a closing chapter. When the door shut behind him, Camille stood alone, staring at the rain before the storm. For the first time, she saw it differently. It no longer looked like a tragedy. It looked like closure. Later that evening, when the gallery emptied, Camille walked to the Seine. The city lights shimmered on the water like scattered dreams. She took the earring from her pocket, the one Andre had returned, and held it over the river. "Thank you," she whispered to the night and let it fall. The earring hit the water with a quiet splash, sinking into the depths, into peace. Camille stayed there a while, watching the ripples fade. Somewhere behind her, the bells of Notre Dame began to chime, echoing through the city that had witnessed their love, their mistakes, their redemption. When the final bell rang, she smiled, a small, genuine smile she hadn't felt in years. She turned and walked away, her silhouette blending into the Paris night. For the first time, she didn't look back.